So kind of piggyback, not so much piggybacking, but kind of getting into political talk. So I was, like I said, I was doing my research on you and everything like that. I like to get semi-familiar with panelists before I have them on the podcast. And you were talking a little bit about, I guess you were leaving your church one day and you saw a bumper sticker that said Huck Fillery. And that was when God showed you that you were like not doing something right as far as like being the head of the household as far as church goes. You want to dig into that for me a little bit?
Yeah, I had been on a journey for a while. Like I said, I was Republican all my life, and for much of my life, I believed Christian and Republican were the same thing, like many people believe today. And so I started realizing there was something wrong in the mix here with the politics and the white evangelical church, if I can say that. And even my wife was a Republican elected official. She was the mayor of our city, but both of us were like, "Hey, something is wrong here, man. This Republican stuff means too much to us." And so we were already on that journey. But mostly I thought, it's pretty benign though. Let's just keep trying to move the kingdom forward and things will be okay. Well, then my wife was trying to do some things for the most impoverished, economically disadvantaged in our community, which is a very impoverished community. We have a very poor population in our city of Fresno. And she found that when she tried to do the things to really help people and change the economics for those most economically challenged in our city, that people didn't want that to happen. And the people that were most against it were our evangelical community. Like Christians didn't want the city to do things to help the poor in our city. And that's when we really started going, wow, this is like way off. And so then comes 2015 and here comes Donald Trump. And we're like, well, this guy's insane. Nobody, the P grab tape, the John McCain is not a hero. You're like, well, no Christian is going to follow this guy. And all of a sudden we realized everybody around us is like fawning over this dude. And we couldn't get, and so yes, one day I walked out of the front door of our church, like sometimes during the worship time, I would just go out to make sure things were okay in the parking lot or whatever. And I was the senior pastor of this church. And I walked right into this pickup truck of one of our major members of our church. And they had Trump stickers all over the back of the truck. But the Huck Fillery one, like it, and the funny thing is it was like right over that, the little silver fish bumper sticker that says I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
They had the Huck Fillery sticker right over the fish. And I'm like that. And I truly was like, oh God, what have I done that I've allowed this
convicted in your spirit when you saw it?
Have I allowed this to linger? Am I not teaching people that this is bad? And so, yeah, so that began a whole nother journey, and which ultimately ended with me leaving that position because, in large part, because I was like, hey, this is I started to say a disease. It's an overarching spirit in the church that's really hard to press back against, and it's evil. It's really evil.
Now mind you, I'm not really like, I would say, like a political person. There's this thing one of my favorite rappers is like come out with. He says, I'm politically agnostic. I'm like, I feel that's me. Just because I don't think any political party can completely align with the moral compass that I subscribe to. But man, when I say I thought I was doing something wrong when it came to this whole like MAGA culture thing going on at the time, I was like, what on, like, and I'm sitting there like, did I miss the call? Like, what is happening that I'm missing something? And I get the, I can understand, I empathize with conservatives when they're, when it comes to like, well, actually I can't, with like, pro-life this and policies this, but I guess for me as a Christian and like, and like I said, this is very early on in my walk because I got saved at 19. This is all happening about 2015. So I'm about 22 at the time. So it was a really confusing for me on my walk because I was like, maybe I'm doing something wrong because I'm not following lead. You know what I'm saying? I think I heard you say in one of your videos, stay curious. You know what I'm saying? Like always stay curious and always like, and what I related to is always keep that wonder like a child. And as you walk this walk. And for me, I was just like, this is just not healthy. Spiritually, this is just not healthy. I get that the body is supposed to move in one motion, but it seemed like for a whole, at least majority wise, in my opinion, that like the American church all moved in one direction, I would say. And the few and far between that disagreed with it, you were met with much abrasion. So it was nuts.
Well, so Romans 12:2 is one of my favorite verses in the Bible, and it says, "Don't be conformed to this world." Many translations say, "Don't be conformed to this world." That word is actually a word called aeon, which actually means era or sphere in which you live. And I think we could translate that honestly and say, don't be conformed to your bubble. Don't be conformed to just what you know. But it says be transformed, which is a word that means be completely changed, like a caterpillar to a butterfly, be completely transformed by the renewing of your mind. And again, that word is crafted as an ongoing renewal, not like you get renewed once and you're done. That is forever being renewed. And so don't be conformed to your bubble, but be transformed by the ongoing renewing of your mind. Why? So that you can know the good and perfect will of God in the season. And what did Jesus say to the Pharisees? He said, you guys don't have eyes to see or ears to hear. You can look at the sky and tell me what the weather is, but you don't understand that the Messiah is standing right in front of your face. And he was mocking them to their face and saying, you don't have eyes to see. You have the curse of Isaiah 6 upon you. And I think if we, and actually evangelical beliefs that led to sort of this right-wing mentality are not the long-standing tradition of the church. They're actually it's actually a fairly new theology in the church. And in the American evangelical church, we've come to this agreement of like, okay, we now know everything there is to know, and you have to agree with us or you're outside the norm of Christianity. And that, I don't think that was ever what Christ intended for us. He told the Pharisees, you've taken away the key to knowledge. So I think you're right on, Casper. It's always be learning, always be challenging, always be saying, wait a second, particularly when there's sort of this mob mentality,
right?
Like, always be stepping out going, wait a second, is that really right, God? Show me if there's something more I need to know here.
That's what I guess, like I said, it was very confusing and troublesome for me because, like I said, because, I'm following like these other men and women of God, people I like marveled and I like looked up to. And it seemed like literally every time that I tried to like bring something to the forefront, hey, these are my thoughts about this and this issue. That's not really lining up with what pastor is saying, or that's not really lining up with what this candidate is trying to go for. I'm like, but that's not what I feel in my heart. Like I felt like for me that God was trying to, like, he kept trying to show me, hey, there's a veil that needs to be unveiled. Everybody's like, no, don't look in there. You ever, I'll give you a good scenario. You ever have like people over your house and there's that one room and that room ain't clean. That the dog probably made a mess up in there, and you like, they even walk past the room. You're like, no, don't, just come on, carry on. I felt like what was happening as far as like some of the things that I think everybody has had their eyes open to and the veil being unveiled to is we've been trying to like avoid having certain conversations. We've been trying to avoid having to expose the issues within even our own institution as the church. Because I think I'm trying to remember, there's one of these Christian rappers that said, the church can't fix the world because the church needs to be rebuked first. And it's like, when you hear something like that, it's like, is it true? And
I stole a meme from somebody that said, instead of trying to put Christ back into Christmas, why don't we put Christ back into Christian?
See, man, like, okay, I might have to have Pastor Paul put his Cash App in the comment section. I don't know. Can we take? I mean, we might have to take an offering after that. I don't know personally, but
that's all free advice right there, my friend.
Hey, man.
Seriously, and I see the wonderful comment here of glad to have a white pastor speaking on this. We have decided that abortion is everything in the white church. That banning abortion is all God really cares about. And so I keep challenging people on this, like, okay, show me in the Bible where banning abortion usurps the hundreds of verses that say, make sure those that need resources are having their needs met. Make sure that there's justice for all. Make sure that the foreigner is taken care of. Those are the verses that are repeated, the commands that are repeated again and again and again in the Bible. And the Bible, I'm not going to argue whether an abortion is good, bad, or otherwise, but the Bible never talks about abortion. Never. Like, there's not a verse that talks about. You have to cobble together a whole bunch of verses to make a case, and that's fine. I believe there's a whole lot of things we should be doing to help prevent unwanted pregnancy. I'm all on board with that. But this idea of the single issue voter, that I'm going to vote for this terrible human being for president of the United States because of abortion, and my friends from the communities of color are feeling like I'm giving them a huge middle finger. Come on. I mean, this is nuts. We are in Crackville, man. So anyway, I don't know what else to say than that, but our priorities are way out of alignment with God, and the world knows it. The world is looking at us saying, you can bring the greatest message of heaven you want to bring, but we don't care. We're not listening to you anymore.
Yeah, because right now we're looking silly. I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody through Facebook. I need to just stay out of the comment sections on Facebook. But this man was saying, like, oh, well, the Antichrist just got in the White House. And I'm like, we as a people talking about Christians, if we can appease Caesar, fine. But we were never promised Rome. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, I don't think that they understand that, I always like to say all politics, like ministry, is local. Until we learn to honor our local relationships, we have no right to like speak to Washington to fix certain issues. And as far as like the layers of like pro-life and everything like that, I think that it's way more nuanced than people really realize. Like when people are like, well, we gotta end abortions. I'm like, I'm with you. I'm all about the, I'm all about, the life, and I'm all about the life in the womb and everything like that. But I think if we don't put forth the effort to undermine these areas where like abortion thrives in, if we're not willing to give, fair treatment, fair education, have a way that way the turbulence and maybe even the hurdles that these communities have to face, where once again that abortions thrive in, or people, school to prison pipeline, all these other things that you have to like kind of consider if you really think about pro-life. I just think that people, they get caught up in the womb of birth, but not get caught up in like the life that we have after birth. Or as somebody on a podcast yesterday, a lot of people are pro-birth, they're not pro-life.
Right. Our responsibility for human beings ends once the umbilical cord is cut. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely nothing. Jesus, for one, when Jesus was on earth, there was a practice that the Romans did called exposure. And so a father, the man in a household, had every right, if he didn't like a baby for any reason, if it had a blemish, if it was deformed, if it was deficient, if it was female, he could just take that baby and put it on the town dump heap, and an animal could carry it away. Another family could come and take it to raise it as a slave. It was a very common practice. Yet Jesus never once, we don't have a single moment in the Gospels where he says that's the biggest sin of Rome. That's what's going to bring Rome down, right there. And I think that's really significant. If we believe, as the evangelical white church, that abortion and again gay marriage are what God cares about more than anything else, I think Jesus would have at least mentioned each of those at least once in the Gospels, but he never mentioned either one.
I've never even seen. I caught a lot of flack, and I'm one of those. I think I just learned that I'm one of those like go against the grain, make religious people mad.
You are. That's why I like you, man.
So I think I'm on a good track. But I put a post on my Facebook. I think it was like a couple weeks ago. I was saying like you can't be a Christian and homophobic, and a lot of people had an issue with that. They're like, so you're telling me you're not gonna tell them that a sin is sin? I'm like, I mean, they probably know that just by knowing who I am and the fruit that I bear. But at the same time, does that mean that the dignity that they deserve as a human being is receded? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times with Christians, we always get caught up, I would say, like just as society as a whole, we get caught up in the sin and like the nature of sin. But then it's like God said just scales across the board. For me personally, I mean, what you eat don't make me poop. That's just me personally. I'm going to love on you. Jesus died for you too. So I think I'm going to love you too. That's just the energy I'm on. But I feel like a lot of times that people are like almost looking for a reason not to love somebody. You know what I mean? They're looking for a reason to not give them dignity, not treat them with dignity and respect. And God's never like that, because of one of my favorite quotes, I might have to put it on a shirt because I say it all the time. If God killed us at our worst, hell would have bunk beds. Plain and simple. Like, it just, I don't know. I question all the time, like, what are we doing wrong? Like, what is it that we're doing wrong at this point?
I think God is okay if we love people right where they are. Mm-hmm. And I think we forget that it's Holy Spirit's job to convict people, not my job to convict people. I think that's a big misnomer. And so I personally believe some of what we teach in theology around sexuality comes from misinterpretation of the Bible. And we can argue that. But even if you don't agree, so the passages in the New Testament that are used to condemn gay people are Romans 1, 1 Corinthians 6, 1 Timothy 1. And the problem with that is in all three of those passages, sexuality is included with a whole bunch of other stuff, like larceny and gossip and overeating and disobeying your parents and other things. And Jesus himself talked about divorce. And we in the church don't treat any of those other issues in any way close to how we treat homosexuality. So somehow we've determined gay people are this excluded class that we get to really look down upon. And we couch it in like, oh, we're trying to help them go to heaven. But what we're really doing is we've singled a class of people out and said, you don't quite have the same grace from God as the rest of us do. And it's, there's a word for it, and it's hypocrisy. And when I see Jesus in the Bible, the one thing that really got him irate was hypocrisy and putting bondage of sin on people. And so I believe the way the evangelical church, and particularly the white evangelical church, approaches homosexuality is an affront to God. If God wants to change the sexuality of people, then our job is to bring them into connection with God and let him work that through. My job isn't to tell them how to live their life or who to love. And honestly, I have gay friends that have been married as long as me and my wife have, and probably have better relationships than my wife and I have. So who am I to tell them you don't know how to do this relationship thing very well? And the one other thing is, I hear people say, yeah, but there's so much damage done to your life if you're gay. The suicide rate is so much higher amongst gay people. And my answer to that is like, yeah, maybe because the church is telling them that God hates them. Maybe if we would stop telling them that God hates them, they would be less shamed and they would kill themselves less often. So I think it's just time for us to say, okay, what does the Bible say about this? We can have that discussion on one hand, but over here, it doesn't matter what it says about us, about that. It's he still tells me to love everybody and to bring them to the Father and let the Father work it through. And that's where I just think we've gotten way off. We just feel so free to condemn people. And I think, like you were saying, in some ways, it just makes me feel better if I get to be better than somebody else. And I don't think I'm supposed to want to be better than somebody else.
I always one thing that I always point to, and you might know this podcast. Well, actually, you said you were a football fan. Matter of fact, you said you watch football and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was a sportscaster for about 25 years. So
I forget that. Aspect. But there's this guy who used to be. Well, we got him on the tail. Okay, so all right, so I'm gonna need you to pray for me, Pastor. I'm a Giants fan, so I suffer from depression, right? So this guy, he used to play for the Giants. His name is Brandon Marshall. He had a podcast on YouTube and everything. Now it's called I Am Athlete. But they did this series. It was like fresh after like the George Floyd murder, everything like that, where there was like protests everywhere in the United States, around the world, really. And he brought up the conversation because he is a born again Christian. He brought up the conversation. I don't think now is the time to have a conversation about religion. And when he said that, it kind of rubbed people the wrong way. And one of the things that he pointed to, and I even took a clip of it and I posted on my Instagram, was, before Jesus performed a miracle, he healed them first. Everybody's complaining about and I don't even know if this is true because everybody likes to make stuff up, but everybody was talking all the smack how like George Floyd had fentanyl in the system. Oh, he had this on his record. This is that and the third. I'm like, but why did he die? I'm pretty sure if you wanted him to change his life around, you're going to do it a lot faster with your knee off of his neck. And I always try to tell people, like, if what you're doing in your efforts as a Christian is causing more harm where you are shortening life opposed to helping life grow in all aspects, but at the basic minimum, love, you're doing fruitless labor, in my opinion. And that's why I'm like,
clanging gong, the Bible says.
Pretty much. One of my big things, and like you saw it on my Instagram and my handle and everything, my thing is lead with love. And I say that because I always go with, God is love, love is God, lead with love. If we ain't going to do it with love, we shouldn't be doing it, period. I think it's the book of Matthew that says where God appeared in front of the church and like he was pretty much, hey, what's cracking? How y'all doing? All y'all are going to hell. Okay. So, and then just kept it moving. And then when they asked him, why are we going to hell? Didn't we do this in your name? And he's like, I don't know you though. And when I look at that, it's like, if they really truly knew God and know the goodness of God, it would be easier to dish out to people.
Yeah. Wow. First John chapter 3 talks about how you show, Jesus showed that he loved us by giving his life for us. He showed God's love for us by giving his life for us. And we show our love by doing the same. And then the next verse, it says, if you see somebody in need and you have the world's resources to help them and you don't, you deserve to go to hell, and the love of God is not in you. And so we think, hey, we say a prayer and I'm good with God. And if I make a mistake, I can confess it's good. And I'm all for grace. And I believe grace is everything. But then it has to start to display itself in our lives. It has to start to manifest. I have the love of God in me. So I can't sit and be okay if people in the world are living in injustice. And I think the race relation thing is right in the center of God's heart. And he's calling out to the white evangelical church and saying, okay, here's your chance to repent of what you've been and change and walk this differently. I think I saw the meme on MLK Day that said, stop quoting my words, do what I said, and I think it's just time. I think it's time for the church to say, hey, so I'm going to be really real here and say, hey, white supremacy is sewn in the fabric of our religion. It is, we even created a white Jesus that never existed, ever.
Pastor, you better talk.
And then you mix that with how we despised the protest over the summer, and then a Jesus Saves flag is taken into the Capitol in a riot. There's a cross erected right next to a gallows, and we need to own, and there wasn't a black face to be seen within miles of that Capitol.
Well, they were looking though.
They were trying, weren't they? There was not a black or brown face anywhere.
Pastor, it was like, where's Waldo on Twitter? I kept seeing like this one thread of like this white person I follow on Twitter. It was a thread where they kept like taking a screenshot of like the original picture, and then they just zoomed in, screenshot, zoomed in. Like, look, I can't find none. I'm like, yeah, y'all looking.
And then they try to say it was Antifa. It's just like, my goodness, guys, how far gone are we?
The bad thing is like, and I don't know if you have Hulu, like they did like a coverage on it on Hulu where they showed like pretty much what happened at the Capitol. People came out of the Capitol, they're like, yeah, we did it. We won the revolution. I'm like, are y'all, what weed are y'all smoking? Like, I'm really confused. What is happening right now? I'm concerned. And I think the one thing that broke my heart the most is, and my mom knows about this, she's moderating tonight, and
hi Mom.
You'll see her as Eileen Seipel. Pastor Paul says hi, Ma. But this was freshly after the verdict, or lack thereof verdict, of the Breonna Taylor case for the cops. And when I saw like commentary from the church and everything, for me, I personally, Pastor, I personally lost dignity in the term Christian. Like, I'm not even cool with being called that anymore, honestly, because what I've seen, at least just in this country, as far as like its representation of Christianity, and then from like literally the White House to the pulpit, I was like, I don't have dignity in that word anymore, personally, because I've seen what Christianity, at least just in this country, Western Christianity is kind of janky, but for me personally, it was something, and my mom knows I cried a lot about it. I was like, this is really sad. And then when I saw like the Jesus flags and all this other stuff taken in the Capitol, I was just like, all right, we got work to do.